Hey, everybody. Show's getting started in just a second, but before we roll into it, I wanted to let you all know that Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting, and we're so lucky to have them as a partner. They've got every stat, every matchup breakdown, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games, and they've got the largest catalog of odds anywhere: football, baseball, hockey, basketball. They've got political props, and when the game's over, you can head to the online casino through Bet Online, get down on some blackjack, some poker, unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online. The game starts here. Requests were made on the YouTube side for a dark skin in terms of the background here. So, you asked, you shall receive. A black background for the YouTube feed. For audio folks, the background remains, in the words of the great Ned Flanders, nothing at all. Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all. Welcome, everybody, to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Vespris. It's ADP Shift Monday. It's the last one. It's the last one until, next August, I guess, because the NBA season starts tomorrow. Side note, we're going to have another show later on today with a weekly preview, and that's something we're going to try to do every week, and my goal is to get those out earlier this year. Last season, we did them at 2 o'clock right before the week started, which from a start-sit standpoint was a little bit easier because we had more information, but from a planning standpoint, it would probably be better if we can get those out on Sundays, and I will do my best. I'll do my best. That's all I can say on that front. Please follow me on Twitter at Dan Vespris, DanBesbris. Thank you, everyone, for making yesterday, Sunday, October 20th, 2024, the most downloaded day, not just in the history of Old Man Squad, but in the history of any podcast I have ever done. I don't usually like to talk about the exact numbers of downloads, numbers of listeners, stuff like that, but this was sort of a big deal for me. Yesterday, between YouTube and Apple and Spotify and after the fact and all that stuff, we combined for over 20,000 downloads across our episodes. Just ridiculous. I can't believe it. I'm blown away. So thank you all. Seriously, appreciate you all. Let's keep humming, man. We're not done tomorrow. That's the season begins. That's when we just start. So yes, thank you for all the likes. Thank you for all the comments, subscriptions, all that good stuff. And the 5-star reviews lately have really, really, really gone a long way. Thank you for those as well. This is our last ADP Shift Monday because ADP shifts won't matter starting tomorrow. The season begins. But for those that are having their drafts today, and I'm among you, I have 3 more fantasy drafts this afternoon into the evening, and then I'm finally done with a total of 8 cash drafts this weekend and today. So these last 3 days have been a little bit harrowing. I have always pushed to have my cash drafts at the last minute, but everybody listened to me, I guess, and now I'm paying the ultimate price for it. But anyway, who are the new steals? Who are the new busts as players move up and down the draft board? We will, of course, analyze these with an eye on where the ADP shifts mean the players are going. We have 15 risers, 18 fallers, which, believe it or not, is kind of a low number for us these days. But that's because Yahoo didn't put out a new damn board. Thanks, Yahoo. Let's start with the risers. We'll start at the top. I'm going to try to highlight the name briefly that we're talking about so folks that are watching can zip through if they want. I apologize. I don't have timestamps. If somebody wants to do those for me, I will happily copy them into the show description. Very much cool with that, but I don't have enough time to do both shows today with all the prep and all the work and also go back and timestamp every single little thing. So apologies in advance on that one. I know I suck, but at least, as my dad used to say, I'm comfortable with my shortcomings. James Harden up to 15.7. It's not a massive jump for him, but it is enough. It's notable. Another 1.1 higher, despite the sort of negative buzz around the Clippers. Harden continues to go earlier. And frankly, 16, which is, we're rounding a bit, but if that's where he's going, I'm good with it. Like I said, I'll take Harden at the end of the first round. I think, especially if you're punting turnovers, that's where he's going to end up in overall rank this year with more than 20 points, more than 10 assists, terrific free throw numbers. He's over 5 rebounds. He gets steals and blocks, not a ton, but a decent chunk. And I just think it's a really easy player type to build around. When you think about someone like Tyrese Halliburton, who's sort of, consensus like 6th, 7th overall pick, I don't think he's got much on Harden. Their fantasy games are going to be very similar, with Harden probably rebounding a tiny bit better and Halliburton's field goal percent better and turnovers better. But a lot of you guys punt turnovers anyway. So I'm still okay with Harden here. I've taken him as early as 11 in some drafts. More so a head-to-head move, I think, than Roto, depending on who you pair him with. But I'm good with that either way. Cat up to 20.3. It was almost a 4-slot jump this last week, 3.6. And he is still very much motoring up draft boards. He was 33.5 before the trade to New York, jumped 5 slots 2 weeks in a row, and now another 3.5, which tells us he's probably going more like that sort of 16, 17 range, which I think is fair for him. He's probably going to be a second rounder per game this year. And you just hope that his body can kind of hold up under the rigors of a Tom Thibodeau coached team with no depth of any kind. His backup, say Jericho Sins, but it was really Precious Achua, just blew out a hammy. So his tire is out and he's down for 2 to 4 weeks. And the Knicks are unbelievably thin right now. And I worry that a giant start to Cat is going to lead to a clunky finish. Hopefully not, but he feels like a relatively safe second round pick, so I'm not going to be a dick about it. LaMelo Ball up to 21.4. He jumps 1.7 slots on the board. LaMelo does. Small, continued incremental forward movements have me believing that while Ball's ADP is 21.4, he's really going more mid-second round, so kind of like that 18 range. Although I got him at 30 in a draft over the weekend because nobody wanted anything to do with his ankles, presumably. But, man, if you can get him at 30, you've got to do it because even in 9-cat, he's better than that. LaMelo was number 27 in 9-cat last year. And if you happen to either have a low turnover team around him or don't care about turnovers, he was number 15. Same general story for field goal percent. If you have a team that's built to withstand a field goal hit, great. If you don't care about it, also great. He's better than that. So yes, the final thought there is LaMelo at 21.4 is still fine to me. Tyrese Maxey had a slightly larger jump. He's up to 26.8. No surprise there. This is the end result of the Paul George injury and the news break that Joel Embiid didn't play in the entire preseason and also is going to sit out basically every back-to-back, as he put it, for his career. And so Maxey now makes sense. ADP of 26.8, going at the end of the second round, beginning of the third. That's exactly where he should be. When Paul George is out and Joel Embiid is out, you're going to see a lot of what you got last year, which was high volume, lower efficiency. That's a second round spot for him. If one of those guys is in, you see a slight efficiency tick up and a volume tick down, and that keeps him kind of in that second round range. If the team is ever fully healthy, and I presume they will be at some point, that's when you may think about baiting Maxey. That brings him down into the mid to late 30s, maybe even the early 40s, depending on what kind of a hit he takes. Probably not 40s. I would think 30s. And so it kind of balances out to where he's going, which is, in my opinion, he should be going early third. That's what his ADP suggests. Don't go much earlier than that, though. There's a lot of like, oh, got to take Maxey in the second round because Paul George and Joel Embiid are out for, I don't know. We're treating them like they're out for the year. They're not out for the year, guys. Small jump, but a notable one for Cade Cunningham, who's up to 33.5 now. And it's only notable because he's stuck at 36 forever. And over the last 2 weeks, he's jumped up about 2.5 slots. I'm not pointing this one out because I think it makes a huge difference. Because, like, you want to take Cade at 33, fine, be my guest. You want to take him at 38, fine, be my guest. If he falls to you at 40, fine, be my guest. But just note that if you're jumping into a public draft, odds are he's going to be off the board before the end of the third round now, which I don't think we could say confidently 2 weeks ago, but I think we can now. And for that reason, as my mouse stops working for a moment, that's going to slow things down, isn't it? For that reason, sheesh, come on, Dan, get a working mouse. There we go. There's the mouse. It's back. I'm okay with Cade there. I would prefer a punt turnover team if you're going to take him in the 30s. Prefer it. I don't insist upon it, but I prefer it. Julius Randle up to 62.7. This feels like a real 8-cat type of swing on Randle. I'm realizing that I also mucked up my settings looking at something else here. Randle is, I believe, going to be a lot like Randle in New York. He goes from a place where he was the number 2 to another place where he's the number 2. So 17, 18 shots a game feels well within reach for him, 20-plus points. Rebounding might come down alongside Gobert instead of Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein. Assists should be fine. 3 steals, blocks are all relatively low. Field goal, free throw are sub-average, but not horrendous. And then turnovers are pretty damn high. So with Randle, if you're taking him here, I believe you should definitely be punting turnovers in a way that, rolling the clock back just 45 seconds. Cade Cunningham, if you take him in the 30s, you don't have to punt turnovers. He could be a 40-something 9-cat guy this year, and it would not surprise me all that much at all. Same story with LaMelo Ball. If you're taking him at 21, he could be around 21 in 9-cat, 24, 25, something like that, but not far off. Whereas with Randle, there's almost no chance he gets into the 60s in 9-cat. Almost none, if you give a crap about turnovers at all. If you're taking Julius Randle at the beginning of the 6th round, I now insist that you punt turnovers. But again, look, you can get away with it. You could do it and not punt turnovers, and head-to-head, week-to-week, these things fluctuate, so I get it. You might end up going, 4 and 12 or 5 and 12 or whatever in turnovers, despite having Julius Randle's big hit. One man doth not a punt turnover team make. But it's a little silly to take him and not be strongly considering that path, because that's his massive weak point. Just eliminate the weak point, match up some players on your team that all have the same general weak point, and you could be quite good in a lot of other stuff. Just the flip side of that is Tobias Harris, who's up to 64.7. A medium-sized jump for Toby, 3.3 slots from 68 to 65, basically. Yahoo moved him up again. That's what we're seeing here. He's going in the late 50s to early 60s now. This is just telling us part of the story. And that's super annoying because he opened up in the 80s and he was my favorite play on the whole damn board, because somehow last year, despite having a crap role in Philadelphia, he was still number 48 in fantasy circles by just being average at everything. Now he should be ever so slightly above average at scoring and assists, and the impact of his good percentages should be a little bit better. And so you just tick him forward in 3 or 4 whatever categories, and he goes from late 40s to probably early 40s. I think Tobias Harris is going to be ranked between 35 and 45 this year. So getting him in the 50s is still okay, but not as fun as it was before. And the difference between someone like Tobias Harris and Julius Randle is Tobias doesn't have a weak category. He's just sort of okay at everything. People call that a roto guy. I think you can use that in any format. What's the problem with using that in a head-to-head league? Anfernee Simons at 78. I am not a massive Anfernee Simons guy. It sounds like he's basically going to be their point guard to start the year, though, which feels wild when you could be developing Scoot Henderson. In any event, Simons last year was also kind of the point guard when he was upright, which sadly only 46 out of 82 games, but he did have 5.5 assists. The problem, maybe we give 2 of them, the problems with Anfernee Simons is that he is a basketball vacuum in a lot of ways. That is to say, he shoots threes, ladies and gentlemen, and he shoots many of them. And he's going to probably make more than 3 threes a ball game. And he's a good foul shooter. And, assists were up to 5.5 last year because Dame wasn't around. So someone had to do more of it. But if that starts to dwindle in any way, that is, if Scoot starts to move his way into that point guard job, and all you're getting out of Simons is points, threes, and free throw percent, what do we call that? The shooting guard conundrum. Shooting guards have crap 9-cat fantasy games. Ultimately, you do need some of what they bring. Scoring and threes and free throw percent are 3 out of the 9 categories. But you can usually find someone in what's effectively now the early 7th round that does more than those 3. Now, I'm just not into it, man. I'm just not into it. Okay, fine. If you want to tell me you're, punting turnovers, he gets closer to that. If you want to tell me you're punting field goal, he gets closer to that. I just think, if anything, he's going down this year, despite the injury. Like, he still played 34.5 minutes ball game. It wasn't like being hurt half the year impacted his minute per game count. His job's going to stay similar until it's not. I don't like it. Sam, I am. And I know there's the punt thing, but again, we're talking about a guy where you should be punting him to take him where his ADP is listed. Not that you could, you should. OG Anunoby up to 80.5. I'm, odds are he actually beats this on a per game basis. I just don't trust his body. And if the steals and blocks happen to slow for any kind of stretch of time, then it's going to be really hard because I don't think he's going to score more than about a dozen points a game. 13, 14, something in that range. So we're talking 3-and-D hard with OG. And I kind of worry we've priced him out there at 80.5, especially given the concerns on health. The 2 biggest leap, 2 of the 3, I guess. We're into the big leapers portion here. 3 of the next 4 names are massive leapers. Ivica Zubac up to 86.8. So is Walker Kessler. They actually jumped to the same exact number. Both of them up to 86.8. Zubac had to leap 8.5 slots to get there. Kessler leapt 11. That was the big jumper. And I'll be honest with you guys. With both of these guys going now in the 70s, again, this ADP up into 87 range only tells you about, half to 2/3 of the story. Zubac and Kessler are both going late 70s, early 80s, possibly earlier in some spots. Kessler went in the 60s in a draft I was just in. If Kessler gets near 80, I'm all over it. If I have to take Kessler near 70, I'm probably still doing it. If I got to go earlier than that, I think I'm going to the group of centers before him on the board. Ivica Zubac, I'm not quite as high on him as I am Kessler. These were 2 of my favorite players on the board a couple weeks ago, and now they're ruining my life. So what do we do? With Zubac, I think you can go 75 or later and still have a tiny bit of room, but now you're talking about kind of even money at 75 with Zoo. With Kessler, even money is probably more like 65. But again, with this ADP only telling us part of the story, Zubac is almost priced out. Kessler has a little bit of room left. Colin Sexton still moving up the board, not as fast as before. He's up to 93.8 now, and I'm seeing him go in the 80s in most drafts. So the ADP rise on him is slowing down at the very least. I'm totally fine with Sexton in the 80s. That's basically where he belongs. I expect his job to be pretty similar to what it was the second half of last year when he was around number 90 on he's like built on the chassis of Anfernee Simons, but you remove the 3-point shot and replace it with a respectable field goal percent and slightly lower turnovers, but not a massive difference there. So why do I like Colin Sexton and not as much Anfernee Simons? Well, because I can get one of them around later. If you gave me Simons near 90, I'd probably be a little more in on him. Also, that's really it. Like, I'd take either of those guys near 90 but I don't really want them in the mid-70s. You know, I don't think that's that crazy. That round and a half makes a big deal to me. The guys that are going in the mid-70s, if you're looking at the pre-ranks instead of the ADP, you still got shots on guys who do more stuff. Jordan Poole, big upside play in there. Intriguing other guy with similar ADP. Zach Edey, the second biggest jumper behind Walker Kessler, just ahead of Ivica Zubac. Edey jumped 10 slots this last week to 99. ADP inside the top 100. That's ballsy, man. And I'm not saying that it's not going to work, but it's ballsy as hell because we don't know that Edey's going to get more than 24 minutes a game this year. And look, in 24 minutes, he probably can get top 100 type numbers because he's going to rebound, block shots, and get field goal percent without ruining your free throw number. That's the big man template that we want to use. But we also want a guy that could get like 28 minutes a game. And I don't know that has almost any chance of happening if indeed JJJ is healthy to start the year and then healthy throughout the year. I liked Edey at 110, and I struggle to make that play at 100 now or earlier. We just talked about, and I forgot to highlight a bunch of players for YouTubers. Sorry, you figured it out. I was still talking. Donte DiVincenzo at 106.6 now. Eric Ong talked about him on our show over the weekend, who you should all be following at Rotomancer. I think Dante's going to be around top 100. I don't have the massive forward steamroll in my mind, but Eric almost talked me into it. I just, I thinking through the Timberwolves, they need scoring more than the healthy Knicks team did. So think of it from that perspective. Like for Randle, I know we just talked about his role probably not changing all that much. DiVincenzo was likely to be either the fifth starter or the first man off the bench with the Knicks, but behind Brunson, Cat, Bridges, and Anunoby in the scoring pecking order. In Minnesota, it's only clearly Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle taking more shots than DiVincenzo. Like there's a legitimate chance that when you stack him up against Mike Conley and Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert and Rob Dillingham coming off the bench and Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid, who, by the way, I like Naz Reid. DiVincenzo could get as many shots as those guys. So what Donte are we going to get this year? Is it going to be the Warriors Donte? Is it going to be the Knicks Donte? He was number 64 last year on about 12 and a half shots per game. I don't know that he gets to 12. I think somewhere between 10 and 12 is attainable, which pits him somewhere probably between 65 and 110. So, and then if the minutes are not at 20, he was at 29 minutes a game for the Knicks when everything was rolled together last year, which of course included the run at the end of the season when he was playing 40 minutes a game and taking 20 shots a night. There's this weird, is the usage going to be as high in 29 minutes in Minnesota as it was? The hope is that, yes, that it parallels more the, we need you to do more scoring Donte as opposed to sideline role player Donte. But do the steals come down? What if he only plays 28 minutes instead of 29? So I think there's a little bit of a step back coming for DiVincenzo, at least against, the full season marker for last year, which ended up as massive because of the run he had in the second half when the Knicks were all hurt. Would I take him at 106? Yeah, I mean, probably. Although my issue there is that the other guy's going right nearby. Daniel Gafford, I'd rather have him. Jalen Suggs, I think I'd rather have him. Chris Paul, I'd probably... that one's a little more league dependent. Caruso, Draymond Green, I'd probably rather those guys from just a safety standpoint, but then DiVincenzo would be right behind. So, fair enough. And finally, Jaden Ivey, who's down in that sort of deep zone, but just wanted to point him out because he did jump, and he's moved from the 140s earlier this draft season to about 130. I don't really want Jaden Ivey. I think the preseason explosion was just that, a preseason explosion. His stuff will level off. But it is worth pointing out that he's now starting to go in that 11th, 12th round range. So if you have any thought of taking Ivy, and for points leaguers, that's something to consider, you're going to have to go just a little bit sooner. All right, let's get into the droppers. The ADP droppers. Oh, did I screw this up? No, I didn't screw it up. Joel Embiid down to 11.1, which again, this is on the no preseason, no back-to-backs kind of thing. But at the same time, like, did we really think he was going to play more than 62 games this year? I didn't. So the fact that he's now going in the second round, especially with the amount of games cap leagues I'm in, I will draft the crap out of Joel Embiid early in the second round. And then just hope for 60 ball games. That's all you need. Don't get hung up on like, oh, could he get to 66? No, don't even worry yourself with that. Hope for 60. He plays 60 games. You draft him in the second round, he'll be a second rounder or better by totals. Domantas Sabonis is down to 15.1. Yahoo moved him down, and people are reacting to it, which is weird because Sabonis feels like a prototypical second rounder. He's a third round per game guy with a puntable category, a couple of them really. You could punt threes, you could punt defensive stats, blocks in particular. He's a punt blocks big man. You can punt free throw if you wanted. I think punt blocks is probably the easiest one to roll into. So mid-second round, why the hell not on Sabonis? I don't fully understand this one, other than like he wasn't a prime target of mine. I don't think he's a guy you want to build around as a first rounder, but second round seems fine. Kevin Durant continues to drop another 1.8 slots down to 18.9. You can there are leagues now where you could pair Kevin Durant with a top 3 pick. Like you could go Jokic Durant in some spots. I guess technically he lines up more with Anthony Davis here at ADP 19 on the way back. But good Lord. Yes, give me all of the end of the second round Kevin Durant's, please. That's an easy call. Devin Booker down to 20.7. Again, don't fully understand it. He feels like a very safe second rounder, even if his per game numbers slide a little with Tyus Jones in town this year. Like, what are the odds his per game mark is worse than third? I argued against Devin Booker last year because he was going at like 12 or 13, and he damn near got there. Rub it in my face. And he was only like 2 or 3 slots behind that, so, pie in my eye. And now I'm like, look, Booker feels like a safe second rounder, and he's falling. Apparently, I'm not yelling safe second rounder loud enough. Here's another one. You could get Booker with frickin' Wemby and Jokic in drafts this year, and you could definitely get Dame with them because his ADP is now at 24.9. Damian Lillard has fallen into the third round, and I mean, with Chris Middleton, the news coming out that he's not ready for opening day. Surprise! No one's surprised by this. Middleton not ready for opening day. Just say opening day is coming. It's the same. Sheesh. Anyway, I'll take Dame at 25 1,000 times out of 1,000. Paul George, pretty good drop-off for PG from 29 to 34. This, of course, is the hyperextension news. I don't want Paul George inside the top 40. I am genuinely concerned he does not get to 62 games this year, and there's just not enough room there if he doesn't. If you can get him outside the top 40, I'd probably do it because he's going to try to play once he's ready to play. Jamal Murray down to 53.7. Not a huge fall off, but he's just been steadily dropping, and people are afraid of his knee, as they should be. He doesn't look well, but I've seen him fall into the 60s in a couple of drafts, and there I think you can take him. I don't think I want Jamal Murray in the 50s. I know that the 50 to 30-something jump feels big, but it's not nearly as large as, like, Joel Embiid from 14 to 1. That is a colossal screaming leap. The difference between the number 1 player last year, who was Joel Embiid, and the 14th ranked player, if you want to know how far you have to go from Jamal Murray, where he was, 32 last year? He was 33 last season. Just from a straight value standpoint, you want to know what the gap there is? Embiid to his current ADP in per game value is the same as Jamal Murray from last year, all the way to Dylan Brooks, meaning unplayable. So if you want to get somebody that has a big injury risk and you want them to jump up to number 30 and you want it to be the same amount as upside as doing it with Joel Embiid, you need to be drafting him at 180. But that's a bit of an exaggeration and a bit of an oversimplification. Suffice to say, like, the reason I like Kawhi Leonard, who's the next name on the list, going in the mid-50s is because he's mid-50s with injury risk. And okay, Kawhi's out for the start of the season, so it's apples to oranges a bit because Jamal Murray is expected to play on opening night. But the reason I'm more into Kawhi in the 50s is because he could be top 5. What's that gap? Yes, it's about 48 actual numerical roster spots. But the gap from top 5 to number 55 is about, again, not that far off what we just talked about. Like, that's why I'm willing to take that shot, but not the other one. Although Jamal Murray, like I said, in the 60s, I think I would probably do it. Because, again, he's playing on opening night. Jrue Holiday down to 79.5. I've been waiting for Jrue Holiday to fall into the 80s this entire draft season. And the fact that he finally is music to my ears, because I think he's going to be a 70s ranked guy with maybe a little bit of room to be better than that while Porzingis is out. And so I'm totally into Jrue in the 80s, especially in Roto, because of that across the board stuff. So this one's one that pleases me. Brook Lopez back down to 79.6. I'm hoping it continues to fall. I'm seeing him go in the 80s. I think he fell to 90s in one of my drafts. I'm not taking Brook in the 70s. That's too early. I'm probably not taking him in the 80s even, although I would strongly consider it. And in the 90s is where I would start to look at Brook Lopez. I want him end of the 8th round, beginning of the 9th. And he's getting there in some drafts, but not all of them yet. And when I say yet, but today's the last day. Isaiah Hartenstein only fell to 80 in ADP, although that's not entirely true. This feels kind of cockamamie. I think he went earlier because I only track these once a week. I'm pretty sure his ADP went from 74.5 up to like 70 and then back down to 80. So the fall is more severe than what it looks like over 7 days. If we could have tracked this one like every 2 days, we would have seen a spike and a drop, because I'm getting him in Roto leagues after 100, where I have 3 IL spots. Like a Yahoo Roto league has 3 IL spots and a games cap of 82. You have a billion ways to get to 82 games, and so screw it. I'll spend my 9th round pick on Isaiah Hartenstein and just squat on him for a month in a way that in head-to-head I'm not doing it because I can't risk filling up my IL spots. In Roto, you could fill all 3 IL spots and still have 2 more injured guys on your bench, and you'd likely still be fine getting to an 82 games cap. That's the difference between Yahoo Roto and Yahoo head-to-head. Is head-to-head, if you have more than 3 guys hurt, you're going to lose your weekly matchup. Roto, you could have as many as 5 guys hurt without even really falling behind in games played, which even if you did fall behind in games played, you can make up the ground later. That's a strategic discussion for another day. Devin Vassell down to 84.2, and until I get an update on him, I'm just not doing it. It's one of those things where, like, what if we get a Devin Vassell update in an hour? And then I have 3 drafts coming up where it's like, oh, Vassell, he's expected to miss 1 more week and then play. Ooh, I'll go crazy. I'll draft him everywhere. That's one of those rule breakers for me. I do not draft injured guys to start the year unless we know almost specifically when they're coming back. We don't yet. Kuzma, the Kuz man. Yahoo dropped him, and so his ADP's dropping. He's down to 84.5. Kuzma in the 80s in head-to-head is really not that bad of a deal. I clown on him because his game translates horrifically to 9-cat. He's doing all this scoring and rebounding and assisting and 3-ball hitting. And, like, okay, great. You got 4 good categories, but you got 5 that are sub-average. And it balances out to a guy who's outside the top 100 in 9-cat. But there's so many different things you could punt with him that make him fit. Turnovers moves him up to where he's being drafted this past year. Field goal moves him up basically to where he's getting drafted now. Punting steals probably helps him by 50. I didn't even look on this one. So the Kuzma thing, he's a train wreck to draft in Roto at this spot because he'll just hurt you and hurt you and hurt you by not getting defensive stats, by not hitting his shots, by not hitting his free throws, by turning the ball over too much. But in head-to-head, because of variance and team build, like maybe you're bad at two of the things he's bad at. That's where this makes more sense. But Roto, nah. Jonas Valanciunas down to 89.4. I'm still pissed about this one. I thought JV was going to be one of our guys we could draft at like 105 and just coast on good percentages and points and boards for like 3.5 months before they traded him or shut him down. Head-to-head, you can't spend an 8th round pick on a guy who's not going to be useful in your fantasy playoffs. You can't do it. And we know he's not. Even if he stays with the Wizards, he's not going to be useful then because they'll go into pull the plug mode. Valanciunas was a guy I wanted in Games Cap Roto leagues after pick 100. He never got there this draft season, and I'm pissed about it. Mark Williams at 100.5. He's another one where we're so close to like, if we got any kind of okay injury update, I would jump all over it. Because now we're talking about a guy like Hartenstein, frankly, that I think has top 50 per game potential going in drafts outside the top 100. Now, the big problem, the difference between those two guys, is that we know Hartenstein's out for a month once the season starts. We have no idea how long Mark Williams is going to miss. And he missed almost all of last year with a back injury, so everybody's pretty nervous, and I'm somewhat nervous. I wouldn't say super nervous to draft him this year. I drafted him in one league last season, and that league, all season long, I was just like, it's going to be fine. I'm going to get my field goal percent rebound guy back any day now. And they just kept listing him as doubtful for 4 months. Screwed up my team build, honestly. I never made the move to shore up his missing categories because they never were like, yeah, he's out forever. So I get it. I understand your trepidation. But if we get an okay update on Mark Williams and he's going outside the top 100, you have to at least consider it because dude has top 50 appeal. Clint Capela at 105.8. He's the other side of the coin here. I don't think he can almost go late enough because Onyeka Okongwu is healthy and playing again. That's all we were waiting for. Capela's the only upside there was maybe he was going to get to start the season as the only center, and it doesn't look like that's happening anymore. So I want nothing to do with Clint Capela this year. I think you only have a downside with him where, okay, fine, you're punting free throw. Maybe he could be somewhat useful, but there's also a chance that he just gets retired to the sort of the dustbin of fantasy history at some point this year. So I don't want anything to do with it. Klay Thompson down to 108.4. He never should have been going as high as he was, and he's still not going late enough because, in my opinion, you're talking about a low-efficiency three-point chucker who's not going to have the volume he had in Golden State to get near the top 100 unless Luka or Kyrie is out. So, if you can get Klay Thompson in the 10th round or later in a Games Cap Roto format, you can at least consider it. If you take him in the 10th, you have to make sure you get someone in the 11th that you actually trust to play. Like you can start 60 ball games. Because with Klay, you might just be sort of plug and play, drag and drop, whatever you want for your fantasy team. Play him when someone's out. Get 25, 30 starts out of him. And those will be pretty good games, I think. But I don't think he's going to be great enough all season long. And finally, Chris Middleton. The news came out, as I mentioned, already this morning that Middleton will not be ready for the season opener. And again, the surprise of the millennium. Chris Middleton, who had 2 ankle surgeries this offseason, had not gotten to the final stages of what he needed to practice to play. Maybe he's back in the next couple of ball games. I don't know, but I highly doubt they're just going to drop him into 30 minutes. So here's what you do. Head-to-head, you probably don't play him. You probably don't draft him in a head-to-head league. Probably. Again, there's a chance, like maybe you only have to IL him for a week, but then he's going to be 18 minutes, 22 minutes, 22 minutes, 24 minutes, 24 minutes, 25 minutes. And it's going to go on like this. And you're going to get top 100 value at him when he hits 25 minutes. But I have no idea how long it's going to take to get near 30. Was he going to be a top 60 guy at that point? I don't know. I think it's going to be a colossal headache. So I want nothing to do with him in head-to-head leagues. Games cap roto, I'm good with it. Now that he's going late enough that you can get him in the 10th round, sometimes even later. I think I got him in the 11th in one of my games cap roto leagues yesterday. That I'm now good with because you've got your starters set. You can squat on Middleton for a month and a half if you had to, or you can start playing him when he hits 25 minutes, which might be 2 to 3 weeks into the season. That's a more tenable outcome. That's the way you play Middleton right now. But don't do it if you took 2 or 3 risks earlier. If you have, if you're sitting on Hartenstein or if you're sitting on Kawhi or whatever, you probably don't want another guy that you're sitting on because suddenly now you've only got 8, maybe 9 guys you trust starting. If they happen to miss a couple of games here and there, you start to fall way behind in games played. You don't want to fall way behind. 10, 15, 20 games, that's okay. More than that, trouble. And that, friends, is our final ADP Swings show of this 2024-2025 fantasy draft season. It's been a freaking dream come true. Again, I never in a bazillion years thought that we were going to be able to grow Old Man Squad fantasy basketball as fast as we have. This is incredible. Thank you all so much. Let's keep doing it, though. I got 2 more shows, 3 more shows, I think, before the season actually starts. I'm going to keep up the whole 2-a-day thing. Because later today, my goal at least, is to do a weekly preview show, the first of what I'll try to do every week during this season. That'll look at streaming opportunities on the head-to-head side, guys that have better opportunities, things you can do that if you're in a weekly league, schedule analysis, injury analysis, all that kind of stuff going into each week. I will be listing the weeks as a heads up, and I'll say this on that show, by the actual week number that it is, not the period number, because different sites combine different weeks into various chunks, so we'll be going true chronological on that. So that's coming up later today. Tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, we're going to be sitting down with my good buddy and fellow bathroom use enthusiast, Alex Rickling, to talk about industry pickup, the newest and greatest industry competition going on right now. There's an auction league head-to-head. There's a head-to-head 9-cat and a roto 9-cat league. There's 3 leagues. That makes up industry pickup. It's all of the most active fantasy basketball analysts. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about draft results from industry pickup. We'll be going through strategy to get you started for the season. And then we will do one more show tomorrow. Destination unknown. It'll probably be an injury analysis program if I had to guess, because we got to talk about, that's when we'll have all of the information or exactly, whatever we're going to know when the season starts. We'll get into Paul George. We'll get into we'll get into Trey Murphy. We'll get into Chris Middleton. We'll get into Joel Embiid. We'll get into Isaiah Hartenstein. We'll get into Kawhi Leonard. We'll talk about all the guys that are banged up to start the season. That'll probably be our last show. And then Wednesday morning, first thing, box scores. We'll have a couple of games from Tuesday to break down. That will not be the world's longest show. And I don't know that we will have enough at that point to do a buy low, but maybe we'll squeeze in a mailbag or something like that. I don't know why I'm still talking. This show's 40 minutes young. You guys want to go start your day. I'm Dan Vespers, at Dan Vespers, DanBesbris. Find me on Twitter, because everything we're doing on pods, we're doing in real time over on social media. Old Man Squad is the network. That one will follow you back. Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. Come join us in Discord. That link is in the show description. It's totally free. Everything I'm doing is free. If you've got a draft tonight, I've got all my buckets in that free Google sheet, also in the show description. And I'll see you guys a little bit later on today. So long for now.